Okay, now we will cover API calls. API calls quickly. I have this retoolapi.dev is a web where you can create quickly API REST with mockup data. It's really cool. I'm not gonna cover that now, but imagine that I have an API that returns me this array of data. Okay, each one of these objects is a user. Okay, you see the 1, the 2, user 2, user 3, user 4, job, name, address. Great. And if you put this on your on your navigator, you would get this data. This is a get HTTP get. If you don't know about HTTP calls, you should see another like some tutorials, because it's kind of out of the scope of this course. But you should check what is an API REST and what are the HTTP calls. Okay, then which is what I'm using here. And going back to Flutterflow, well, I will save a version. I will say profile with image and video. Save this version, and we go here, API calls. Okay, and I will click on add, create API call, and I will create two, a get and sorry, here is a get, and I will add another one. No, I don't want to discard it. Add call here. Okay, I have to define it first. Well, okay, get, it's to get data. We have like this basic operation. Post is to send data. Delete, it's to delete data. Put, it's to override, and patch is to update data. But I'm not going to cover what are like this syntax. You should repeat and check it, what it is in a video about what are HTTP API REST APIs. The point is, if I put here this URL, come back here, and I paste that URL, and I click on add call, and I click on save, and I come here and I click on response and test, and I click on test API call, I receive this, which is like, if I status 200 success, and I get the same data, you see the ID 1, ID 3, that I was getting when I was calling the API through the navigator. That means that Flutterflow, it's able, I can define endpoints, okay, URLs here. An endpoint is a URL pointing to a specific location in an API REST, and I can load them, and I can interact with them through this interface. I will now create and of course this, how can this be consumed through the through the Flutterflow application? You might be asking. When we are in the application, okay, imagine that I will add another button here. Button. Okay, there is an action. We add an action, and we have AP calls. Okay, AP call, and we select the API call that we were specifying, and that would retrieve us with all the data, and then with that data we could populate the app. To be honest, this scenario, if you're making your own your first app, don't try it to do it like this, because you would need a backend, and it's not easy. Although with the Tinder we will need some sort of backend, but this depends a bit on where if you are starting the app from zero, then I recommend you to do it all with Firebase as the backend. But if you are getting in a company that they have already an API REST, you might have to go through this path. Okay, this This will be covered much a lot more in detail when we do the Tinder app. In fact, we will use it very intensively, especially to communicate sending and receiving data. So now I will cover it very superficially. And then like we can pass, for example, okay, this is a get, and now I will create a post, which is how I communicate with the backend. And if I establish here, for example, imagine that I want to make a post to, and the post needs a certain JSON structure with ID and name, okay? And the name, we need an ID and a name to update it, for example, or to create a new user that has a certain name. Then in variables, I should add a variable called ID, for example, type of data string, a new variable type name, type of data string, and now in the body, I can do this. I drag it, you see, and I'm telling that you have to the structure of the object that you will send to this certain backend will be this one, and I will pass you the variables ID and name here. How do we pass it from the, and this one I will call it post. How do we pass it from Flutterflow? When we create an API call, okay, I delete this action, I delete these conditionals. When we create an API call, once I have established oh, I didn't save it, shit. Sorry for the word. I didn't save it. One moment, I'll repeat it. API call, which be a post. This will be a post. API URL, this one. The variables, there will be two variables, ID type string and name of type string. And the body will be of JSON type, ID, and name. And now I forgot to save it, you see, I forgot to save it. Now I go back here, button, open, I delete everything, add an action, API call, which one? Post. And here, variables, I would pass then the ID and the name, okay? But don't worry, we will see this more in detail when we do the Tinder because we will need it. And then this would retrieve me a result, and depending on the result, if it's true or false, I could perform some operations or some other operations, okay? But for now, just this is enough. It's the first contact with API calls.